Hi, our time is almost coming to an end. I know, I'm bummed out too. You guys have been fun. It's okay though, as long as you're learning, I can't complain as you start moving on to bigger and better things. Now we have to talk about something that might not be the most interesting, but it is definitely one of the most important things that you will need as an RBT. Thus, we will need to have a discussion about ethics that comes to chaining procedures. Some of these things are going to be ones that you have to run into many times throughout the RBT module, but I would like to bring them to the perspective of chaining. Let's start with code 1.02. This code says that as a practitioner of behavior analysis, you are only allowed to practice procedures that you have been trained on. For example, let's say this was your first time hearing about and seeing chaining procedures done. So, prior to this module, you would not have been allowed to implement chaining procedures. However, since you have gone through this module, you will now be allowed to implement these procedures with your clients. This is to assure that the individual running the procedures can do it with accuracy and avoid the risk of malpractice that can lead to worsening of skills for the learner. Now we move on to code 1.04. This code addresses integrity, and the specific area to focus on would be here. This code simply states that as an RBT, the information that you gather and pass on to other relevant individuals, such as your supervisor, are all truthful and no information is falsified. I mean, how hard can it be to not tell lies? It's not like the RBT gets anything for making their data look better. It's accurate data representation that results in the most adequate and appropriate decision making from the team to help the learner. On to code 2.11. Every RBT's job is to provide behavior analytic services to their learners and to make sure the services that they are receiving are what the supervisor has provided. With that said, data becomes one of the most important parts of providing services to our learners. So an RBT needs to have good data collection and storage practices to assure that the valuable information gathered on the learner is kept accurate and safe. This again helps the supervisor to make the important decisions about what to do next with the learner to assure that they are gaining the most from their services. Next up is code 7.02. This is a matter of causing harm to a learner. We can focus here specifically. Let's say you are implementing a certain chaining procedure that involves physically prompting the learner. Now you notice that for one of the steps, when you attempt to physically prompt the learner, they resist and it becomes a struggle. After you finish the chained behavior, you notice that the physical prompt altercation resulted in red marks on the learner's arms. At that point, it would be your responsibility to communicate to your supervisor about this and request that revisions be made to avoid this. Basically, if at any point in time you suspect a learner of being harmed or show signs of being harmed, are all times where you must have the learner's best interest in mind and report to your supervisor. Now we have 9.09. This is, as stated before, regarding the accurate representation of the data that is gathered in session. As an RBT, you are the primary service provider that is responsible for gathering all the information about any changes in behavior that are occurring with the learner, whether that be increasing or decreasing certain behaviors. The RBT also has an obligation for all of the information that is being gathered to be accurate and honest. This involves gathering the data to the best of their ability and not neglecting to gather data on certain behaviors. It's always good to remember that all data is good data. There's no difference if your data shows the client improving or not. If they are improving, the treatment may remain the same to make sure the improvement continues. If they are not improving, then that will notify the supervisor that a change is necessary. Alright, those were a few codes to keep in mind in relation to chaining procedures. I'm sure the other modules have done a good job of drilling the importance of keeping ethics in mind. Just remember that the ethics code is here to protect both the learner and the RBT. Anyway, now let's move on to some checkpoints. You guys are almost done.